Hello and welcome everybody to the Multifamily and More Expert Series, where we dive deep into a specific topic with our expert guest in the area of real estate, mindset, or anywhere in between. This is a special 5-part series where we're talking about underwriting expenses. You can check out this playlist, which will give you, all 5 of the videos, so you can get a better idea of how to underwrite expenses prior to buying a property. My guest, Steve Lyman, is the owner and principal of Superior Management Systems, a third-party management company in Michigan, where I reside, and is also an investor syndicator with 1,000 properties under management and ownership at this point. Steve, I shouldn't say properties, 1,000 units.
I was gonna let you finish before I went and
1,000 units.
Corrected you.
Yes,
it'd be nice if I owned 1,000 properties.
It would be nice. It would be nice. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Absolutely. So let's dive into repairs, maintenance, and Capex. And I did it in that way because I think it's very clear. There's repairs and maintenance, R&M,
Yep.
and there's Capex. What are they? What's the differences between them?
So a good example, your R&M would be you get a call from a tenant, the faucet's broke, your maintenance guy goes out there, replaces the faucet. That is R&M, right? Capex, you look at as these are like big ticket repairs. These might be a boiler or a roof or a parking lot or a sidewalk, big ticket items that, and I can get into the underwriting on an income statement in a few minutes, but big ticket items basically.
Okay, well, let's do that real quick because we're going to talk about how you underwrite these two things for a deal.
Sure.
But for those of you that, end up buying a property, maybe own a property, and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to refinance or list this for sale at some point in the near future. What is Capex versus R&M? What does that do from a standpoint of your net operating income? How do they affect it?
Sure. So your net operating income is obviously your revenue minus your expenses, gives you your NOI. And so depending on the market that you're in, you have a specific cap rate for that market, and that the NOI directly affects the value of your property. Fair?
Fair. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of times, pretty much every time, I shouldn't say a lot of time, your Capex is what we call a below the line item. So it's an item that does not affect your NOI, your net operating income. Same with your mortgage and your mortgage interest, depreciation. All of those fall below the line. In my day job, we call that EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. So very similar in that aspect. So Capex, you can, when you're refinancing a property or you're buying a property, when you're underwriting it, you can usually, I shouldn't say buying, when you're selling a property, you can usually work some of the numbers a little bit in your R&M and move them to Capex. I know Chad's probably going to kill me for this.
No. But I think it's good for people to know, right? Because you could be looking at, as an underwriting a deal, you're getting the owner's statement, and it's good for you to understand, okay, what are they underwriting as R&M and what are they underwriting as Capex? But to your point,
correct.
There's some of this stuff. My accountant says this, hey, you could define this as Capex. It's to your benefit to do that, or it's to your benefit to define it as R&M. So
right, exactly. So if you're trying to get to a value of an asking price that a broker is asking for, there's certain things that you can, what we call add back to increase that NOI to give you, I can justify paying $1 million for this deal.
Yeah. So I want to do this real quick before we get into underwriting this, because I think there was a lot of great value there that you just provided. So let's try to make this simple. Let's say you have a $100,000 net operating income, right? So after you take all of your rents, take out all of your income, revenue, take out all of your expenses, that leaves you with $100,000 in net operating income. That's not going to include your mortgage payment, your mortgage interest, or the roof that you had to replace and the 3 furnaces that you had to replace, right? That's not in that 100,000 NOI. That 100,000 NOI in a market that is a 10% cap rate, take 100,000 NOI divided by 10%, it's $1 million value on the property, right?
Where's that market, by the way?
I don't know, but let's just say
I just made it easy.
I just made it eady.
I want
$1 million value. If it hit 7%,
I'd be
whatever that is.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
I know.
So $1 million property, right? So that's where you're getting that from. Now, if you're taking your furnaces and your large, Capex, capital expenditure items, and including them in as repairs and maintenance, that's going to reduce your NOI.
Correct.
Similarly, if you have R&M items that should be CapEx, they're in there, that, you take those out, that will increase your NOI.
Right.
So they're not.
Let's take $20,000 for example.
Sure.
Right. So you put a couple furnaces from CapEx and they're in R&M, and now that $20,000, your NOI becomes $80,000. So in a 10 cap market, you just lost $200,000 in value.
Right.
And vice versa, right? So maybe there's something in your R&M that should be in CapEx, $20,000. That's $120,000, a $200,000 value increase.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So I mean, it's a real dollars here. We're talking real dollars as far as your how you're operating the property. So you have to know what your CapEx expense is. It's not like it doesn't really exist, but from a standpoint of your valuation on your property, your NOI, big difference between the two. Like one counts, one doesn't. Essentially, is the best way to put it. Fair?
Yep. Fair.
All right. So let's talk about underwriting these two things. So R&M, repairs and maintenance. How do you go about underwriting R&M? Kind of talk through that a little bit.
Sure. So I know a lot of people like to hear per door cost. Now, like when I'm underwriting a deal, I add a few other things into repairs and maintenance, but to simplify it, R&M, you're looking for anywhere from, call it $700 to $900, $1,000 per door, annually, I'll say. Yeah.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
$700 to $1,000 per door annually.
Annually. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, that's the one. We made that distinction on another one of the videos in the series. That is your annual cost, not per month per door, but per year per door. And Correct. This, to clarify as well, you're talking in that B- to C+ kind of working class Midwest environment, right? Like mom and pop, 70s, 80s built type of property. Is that fair? Yes.
I mean, you buy a new Class A asset in Royal Oak, you probably aren't going to have much in repairs and maintenance, compared to a property in Saginaw Township that's a C+ property that was built in the 70s,
Gotcha. And to be clear, you mentioned about a faucet. What are some other items that are typical of repairs and maintenance that you would say?
Drywall repairs, someone blew the door out of their closet, that kind of repair, toilet repairs, leaks, things like that.
Okay, let's localize that a little bit and then kind of transition to the CapEx side. Maybe this is how we do it, but I'm thinking of a unit turn. So you have a tenant that was in a unit, they leave, and when they leave, there are, you're replacing, let's say you're doing these three things. You're replacing the carpet, you're painting the walls, we're doing some drywall repair and painting the walls, and you're replacing the countertops. What's repairs and maintenance? What's CapEx? Or how does that work?
I mean, it's all kind of, it's up to you how you want to underwrite it or how you want to put it into your income statement. But a lot of the times when we're replacing carpet, we're replacing flooring, we're replacing countertops, things like that, we're going to put it into CapEx.
Sure.
Right. So here's the thing you have to think about, and a CPA would obviously fill this in a lot better. But if you are running the property and not planning on selling it within a few years, why not put that in as an expense? Because you want to pay as little tax as possible at the end of the year, right? So you put that in as an expense line item instead of a CapEx item. That expense will help you not having to pay taxes on that.
It matters. Like I said, there's some of the stuff that's on the bubble. When I went to refi some duplexes, my accountant was very clear about, making sure, like, I want to show no profit on my schedule, right? I want to show like a loss. So I have a tax advantage to that.
Exactly.
But some of these items in a year that I'm refining are better not being an expense. Like every other year, they're great as an expense for me because it reduces my income and I get a tax benefit from that. But, and I'm not saying, look, this isn't, to be clear, talk to your lawyer, talk to your CPA. We're not saying just choose whatever you want, throw it in one or throw it in the other. But there are some of these items that by tax code, there's enough ambiguity from what I've learned that they could go either way. And, on a year-to-year basis, it may benefit you for it to be CapEx versus being R&M or vice versa. I think that's essentially what we're saying, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Talk to your accountant.
I hope. Talk to your accountant. Exactly. But that's why it's important to know these things. So, so those items that we talked about would be countertop, carpet replacement, more like a CapEx type of item. You could argue R&M, but more CapEx. The drywall repair and paint, R&M?
I would consider them R&M. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a separate line item under R&M for paint and plumbing and what have you. But yeah, they would fall under the overall category of R&M.
Gotcha. Just so folks have a sense of what falls into these two different categories.
Yep.
Okay. So we talked about underwriting R&M. To underwrite Capex, any thoughts on that? If you're going into a property and you're going to buy the property, how do people kind of get an idea of how much the Capex cost would be?
So Capex is difficult, right? Because it depends on the property that you're buying. You might be buying a distressed asset, or my example earlier, you're buying a Class A property in Royal Oak. So your Capex is obviously going to be different between those two class of assets. But I think you're going to get a good idea when you do your 100% unit walkthrough of in your due diligence, because you're going to know if a boiler is on its last leg or that a roof needs to be replaced. So I would highly suggest using an inspector when you go through your 100% unit turn or unit inspection. And a lot of the times, banking institutions require you to have some type of inspection compared to you doing it yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say, if you are not skilled with this, then bring somebody who is. Like Steve was saying, you can get a general idea of what needs to be done, and then you can make some calls. Like we were talking before this, like, hey, I need a roofer. I need a quote on a this style of roof, this many square feet. Give me an idea. 10 to 15,000. Okay, I'll peg it at 12 or 13 for the purposes of my underwriting or whatever, just so I know what I'm getting into. The importance of that is whether it's all your money in or you're taking investor money in, you need to raise that or put that money in up front, and it affects your returns or your investors' returns. So you need to know what that is.
You need to tighten it up to pro forma it, in the future for your investors.
Exactly. So great stuff. All right. Any other common mistakes that you see or that you've made maybe in underwriting R&M and looking at Capex?
Probably. I mean, Capex can be a big one. If you don't underwrite the right number, you don't underwrite that roof that costs you $15,000. You're going to be out $15,000, and that can, depending on the size of the asset, can make a big difference in if you're going to pay that preferred return to your investors or not. Okay.
One thing too with this, so a common underwriting line item I've seen and have used is, so you have your reserves that you come in with, which is essentially your Capex account and maybe a little bit more, right? But when underwriting, you need to replace that, right? Like you want to, like Bigger Pockets folks that listen to Bigger Pockets, they always talk about put 5% for Capex. And on a single family, that's fine. Like you can do that. I guess there's a similar mindset with this, but do you have an idea or a general gist of how do you replenish your Capex / reserve fund?
Yeah, I always underwrite about $200 per door per year.
Per year.
For Capex. It might be light, it might be heavy some years. So, but I think that's a good number to underwrite.
Okay. And that's just consistently making sure that you're not like pulling from the till and not putting anything back in it essentially. So important line item for people to think about when they're underwriting deals. Okay. Steve, what's a good place for people to learn more about you, Superior Management Systems, and all of that?
I think the best place is our website, which is www.superiormanagement or MG. So let me start over. www.superiormgmtsys.com.
Yeah, beautiful. And guys, if you're underwriting a deal and you're looking at management as one of those, we have a video on management you can check out. One of the great resources that you can have on all of this stuff specific to different markets or whatever is the management company in advance. So I would absolutely recommend you go to Superior Management, get them on your team now. If you own property or if you're about to own property in Michigan specifically, these guys can tell you what to expect. They own property as well. So they're not just managing it. They own property as well, and they can give you a good idea of some of the line items if needed. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of having them on your side. Great. So Steve, appreciate you coming on again and talking through this stuff.
Yeah, appreciate having me.
All right.